Welcome back to Motorcycle Ride and the start of a build series where I'm going to turn this Sportster into something that I can tour throughout Texas this year. And if I can't afford to get a larger machine next year, maybe around the country. My goal is to be able to be on the road for a month or two at the time in the future. So that's what I'm building for with these modifications. But this first year, I'm just going out for, a few days at a time to test my setup. Now, right now, I have a 2005 Sportster, which I just did a comprehensive review of. And I'll put a link to that video down below. If you are new to Sportsters, that might be a good idea of where to start and to kind of pique your interest on whether you want a Sportster or not. But to summarize, I bought this 2005 Sportster, I fixed the carburation, I put new tires on it, I rode it for about a week, and I absolutely hated it. In fact, I put it up for sale going against the mantra I had to not buy stuff that I was just going to dispose of later. My senses came to me. I understood that experts out in the field, old-timers out in the field, had been saying for years that you can turn a Sportster into just about anything. So I put a little bit more labor into it and about $1,000 on top of my purchase price. And what did I do? I actually swapped the Vance & Nines exhaust system out to something stock setup that's a lot quieter, which I don't like loud bikes myself. Biggest difference, swapped out rear shocks, and I completely swapped out the internals of the fork, converting them into a cartridge design. Those two things right there, those three things right there, really did make this a bike that I had more confidence and I had enjoyed more, and it served my purpose for the original reason I bought it, is just a run around in this college town. And I put probably a little over 16,000 miles on it doing that. Now, I do live on the corner of Texas Hill Country, so I have been taking a day or two trips that first year I had it, and I did find I kind of enjoyed it. So I started this channel right here to document those series in some kind of point of view videos, and you can see my experiments before my early experiments in the early videos I did, working out the cameras and stuff like that. FYI, my real job is as a YouTuber, but in the woodworking realm. I am worth effort on YouTube. So I already had the cameras and stuff, and it wasn't a big financial commitment to me to go ahead and start this channel. But touring and camping on a bike is a big financial commitment. And I sold a lot of stuff from my shop, tools I weren't using, to pay for the camping equipment that can go from any bike I own. So hopefully my dream is that maybe next year I will save up enough money so that I can keep this one for my run around duties around town, the mindless miles you end up racking up on vehicles, and I can have something like, right now I'm looking at a Evo Road King or a first generation Valkyrie, because I sold both of those back in my time. Anyways, let me show you what I need to put on this bike to go camping so you can see the reason for some of the modifications I've got to do. Boom! And it's kind of positioned the way it will be once I've got this thing customized, which we're doing in this video. Now, please understand, I get that it looks like I'm completely overpacked, and I would probably agree. Remember, this first year is me trying stuff out and just going to a few events. By events, I mean for my woodworking channel. This traveling is going to open up opportunities for me to actually make real money on that channel, which means that not only am I moto camping, but I need to bring along tools to do woodworking, tools and parts to keep this almost 20-year-old motorcycle on the road, and not only a complete set for a home to camp in, but I also need to be able to work trade shows, art markets, farmers markets, that kind of stuff. And I believe with this setup right here, I can do all that. And by the way, pretty much everything here other than my tent was bought used or at a great discount new. For example, these saddlebags I did get off of Amazon, but they were half price because they were evidently somebody's return. And I don't think they even took them out of the box when they did, because they still had the plastic wrap on it, but they just didn't have the original box in it. And occasionally those kinds of deals pop up. That's kind of how I've been piecing this stuff together, in addition to stuff I already had. And other than the saddlebags, pretty much everything else can be used on another bike in the future if I ever get the capital to get that Road King or Valkyrie. So let me show you what I'm going to be taking along so you can understand the things we are going to be customizing on this bike to turn it into a tourer. So what we have right here is a pair of saddlebags, and I'm going to be putting the heavy stuff in there. One bag I've already got loaded up with all the emergency stuff I need. A battery jump, a air compressor, a set of tools so I should be able to do anything on this bike that's most likely to break down on the road. I've also already started collecting some spare parts. We're going to be taking some parts off of this bike that currently work, but replacing them with new things in anticipation that they might go wrong, the used ones might go wrong. Those used ones I will just pack up and put into my backup parts just in case. This bag right here, hopefully on a trip, if everything goes well, I will never have to open. The other side is going to be also just as heavy, because this side with all those parts and steel tools and stuff weighs quite a bit. The other side is going to be having axes, knives, all the stuff I need to do green woodworking so I can do some kind of live demonstration in meetups and stuff like that. And also in the evenings, because I can't see myself being able to ride for 8 hours a day. I'll probably ride for 4 to 6, find camp. It'll give me something to do, making things that I can sell at local art markets to not only make kind of some fun content, talking to artists from all around the country for my woodworking channel, but maybe it'll pay for some gas. Above that, I'm going to have to make a special parcel tray, which I hope to be able to leave on this bike when I'm not touring for my runaround stuff. And it will remove this section right here, and then make a custom sissy bar that will attach to it that I can remove when I'm back in town, where I can put everything else. Everything else includes a swag, which is basically a coffin-style tent with a sleeping bag and mat all rolled into one. So it takes like 3 minutes to set up. And it also has a little canopy that I can attach to the bike to give me a place to keep stuff when I'm sleeping. It's not a huge, very roomy kind of tent, but it will work for motorcycling, I believe. And then up above it, I have another bag where I'm going to have all my clothes and stuff like that. So all this will be soft, sitting behind me, so I can use that as a backrest. I then have a table that will sit up to full height, so I can put out my wares for demonstrations and stuff like that. Behind that, I will have the sissy bar. I will have another bag. In this bag contains a whole other tent, more the easy up style you have at farmers markets, but it's 4x6 instead of the 10x10. And I'm carrying a tarp, which will work as a wind block for that, or as a cover for the bike, or a ground sheet for everything else like that. And above that one is a tail bag that will carry all my camping gear and food and stuff. And this top section I've just kind of designated as a junk drawer. So that should be enough so that I can travel, camp, stay nice and clean, and work on the road. At least that's the goal. Now, some of the issues I need to alleviate in this build, and these will be the upcoming videos we're talking about, is number one, I've got to dramatically reduce the vibration in my throttle handle if I'm going to be riding this for 3, 4, 5 hours at a stretch. I also need to improve the ergonomics quite a bit. I need to improve obviously the luggage holding system, and after that I need to add some electronic abilities so I can do a full charging setup for all my computer equipment, my cameras, and that kind of stuff. But we are going to start doing all that by tackling the absolute biggest thing on the project, and that is to help in vibration reduction. I've already covered what I've done with the handlebars so far, and I've talked about the ergonomics of it. We are going to do a section where I'm going to lift the handlebars a little bit. I want to try and do that as a convertible so I can put it back into this configuration, this height and angle really quickly, because I do like that for around town. But it's these high frequency vibrations that are just putting my hands to sleep. And in the past ride, I got to thinking, this engine is rubber mounted. That's supposed to reduce the vibrations. But these rubber mounts are almost 20 years old. And a little bit of Googling tells me that most motor mounts, rubber motor mounts, are only designed to last about 7 years. And you figure that tires are, well past being too hard after about 5 years. You have to assume that at almost 20 years, the rubber motor mounts on this engine have got to be rock hard. So my thinking, my hope, is swapping out the rubber motor mounts with new ones will add a little bit more suppleness to it and take away those high frequency vibrations. Because it could be this engine is just acting like a solid mounted engine because the rubber is so hard, and that's why my hands go numb droning down the highway. Now I'm going to be tackling that first because that's going to be the hardest one here, and is to reinforce this idea that you don't have to have a lot of mechanical skills as long as you have some basic tools and the ability to follow instructions. Understand, this build series is not going to be a how-to. I'm going to gloss over a lot of stuff that you should be able to figure out just by looking at stuff. But I will highlight the hard-to-do stuff that might have confused me and took me a little bit of research to figure out before I got to work out. So that's what those videos will be in the future. But before I do that one, I might as well go ahead and disassemble a lot of the parts because each step I've looked in the instructions tells you to do these things. So if I'm going to do all these things at once, from motor mounts to engine torques and to tune-up to the carbureted to the steering stem to electrical issues to welding, all that kind of stuff, I might as well remove all the parts that are in the way now and leave them off until the end. So here's the book I'm going to be using, and here is my bag of tools. Now this bag of tools is something that I've been putting together for about a month now. I just found an old canvas tool bag, and as I used a tool on this bike, I would go through my spares and find an extra one and throw in here, or I would put it on a list. And I went to Harbor Freight and bought a bunch of cheap stuff, and the stuff that was expensive, like sockets, I went to a pawn shop because you can buy them for like 10 cents a socket a lot of times. You just have to sort through and find the ones you want. And I've assembled this tool bag right here, which I'm going to be taking. All these are tools dedicated to this bike. They are all duplicates of what I keep in my garage. So if for some reason I come across somebody on the side of the road that needs to repair something, I have a tool here. I'm just going to leave it to them. It didn't cost me much of anything. If this gets stolen, I'm not going to be stressing about it too much. That's the kind of caliper of tools these are. They're just here to get me running again if I break down on the side of the road. But since I'm doing all this right here, I would highly suggest, and if you are going to be doing the same thing, modifying it, I would highly suggest you assemble a toolkit like this and then try to use it for whatever mod you're doing. And if you find you're missing something, maybe you got the wrong spark plug size, well, this is the time to figure that kind of stuff out and get the right stuff in both your toolkit that you keep at home, your nice toolkit, and your tool bag. So I'm going to try to work out of this, and if I have to go to my main toolbox, I'll make a note. Seems everything you do on a Harley, you've got to take the seat off. This little thing is an aftermarket screw thing, and it's something you just need to get. What comes with the Harley is one of the screw heads, but you're doing this so often, it's just nice to be able to unscrew it without having a tool. But you have to also understand that anybody can unscrew it and take your seat. So, you know, there's pluses and minuses of everything. If you're one of the smart ones that got a carbureted gas tank, there really is only 2 bolts that hold on this particular gas tank and the fuel lines. So I think common sense would tell you that make sure your petcock is in the off position. Now you have both the fuel line and you have a vacuum line on back. The way this is set up, that is, even if you have it in on, supposedly it's not going to allow fuel to come through until the engine is turning over and creating a vacuum. So that is for idiots that forget to turn their petcock off whenever they leave it, or if you're like me, at the top of the hill in my neighborhood, I will switch it to off, and then by the time I get to my driveway, it's pretty much has the fuel float, the fuel level in the carburetor is about empty, and sometimes it'll die and I'll just coast in here. And that just kind of guarantees that I don't have any fuel in the carburetor gum things up. It's a habit I figured out. It's one of those things that you'll figure out riding it, how far down the road you have to be before you turn your petcock off. Anyways, with that done, we'll go ahead and disconnect these wires, these hoses. And just look, that's the original hose. It's already somewhat cracking. I'm surprised. I should have replaced this a long time ago. That's something we're going to have to take care of. Also note, whenever you take it off, there's probably going to be a little bit of gas in the hose if you are like me and demonstrating turning it on and off right here. So it might spill a little bit. If it does and you have this crinkled paint, as we learned from the other side, it will eventually wear through, so be sure and clean up any gas spillage as you do it. Now, I truly hate these style hose clamps because I can never figure out how to get them off. It seems like it's just always a bit of brute force pressure is what it's going to take. So I do have spares for whenever I reattach it. But man, why does Harley do this? And there's that vacuum hose. And on the other side, you do have a vent hose, and it too is cracked, so that's another item I got to replace. Now here's a little trick I saw online for your mobile toolkit. Go get yourself a carabiner for the open ends, and it just kind of keeps them all together. Plus, though I do have, you know, both metric and SAE on this ring, these are the ones that are used on Harleys. There's no reason to carry an entire set, but by having it here also, I can just come over here and figure out what size I need by just going from 1 to 1. Now, both front and rear, they have these little rubber things on the end of the screws. Just kind of protects your paint, and things won't get bumped against it. Don't lose these because, you know, they'd be hard to find. Now, I am notorious for losing parts, or I was in my early days, and a mechanic taught me to not only take them off and hold them in the order you took them off. So we have the nut, this washer right here, but once I get them out, the best place to store these kinds of parts is right back where you got them. Yes, it adds time for a professional mechanic to do this one because you're having to constantly take the same things on and off. But finger tight, you're not going to lose it, and the time it costs you here is the time you save looking for parts. Do that wherever possible. And it's also good to get a Ziploc bag. In the mechanic shop, they always label the bike and stuff like that, but this is I am probably going to lose this part, and I don't want to lose it. So all of them go into the bag so you can find them again. Just don't lose the bag. Now, something I should have done before I started taking the tank and seat off and stuff like that is because I know I'm going to take the exhaust off just to make moving the engine around to get those motor mounts out easier. So right off the get-go, go ahead and put some kind of penetrating oil on all the bolts on the exhaust so that they have a time to soak before you have to use them or take them off. Those bolts in particular, because they get hot and cool, they have a tendency to seize up and rust and stuff like that. So they need it. Here's a little note, the turn signals, I can't get to this bolt without breaking this. They just pop right out and you should be able to just pull this out. But that right there gives me enough clearance to get to this bolt. There we go. And this one's being held on with a little clip that you're going to hear fall as soon as I get it out. I will say how they have the battery in here. There's this clip right here. It's a little kind of a Z clip. There's one bolt right there. That's the only thing holding this in. It looks like there should be some kind of strap or something. I mean, that's how most bikes are, but just that one thing, which means the battery has a little bit of free play and you kind of have to lift it to get that out. But once again, if you got all your sockets on some kind of holder, you could just bring the holder out to figure out what size that is. And when you assemble your toolkit, do not forget little extenders. They will be lifesavers. After a while, it's so close to the top, the socket won't fit on it. That's why I'm having to do it by hand. Just use a plastic screwdriver and try not to touch anything when you're undoing these. But once you see something, there's a little nut in here that slides in and out, and you can see how the shape of the hole that goes in. That's why so you can position it to the side or up and down. But don't lose either that nut or the spacers, because they make these generic and then they just sell spacers for the individual machines. So if you lose those, it's kind of hard to figure everything out. And that one also has a spacer we can't lose. So all these go into my can't lose bag, and it's kind of nice me having a camera, because if I don't forget where they go, I can always go back and look at the film. So even if you're not posting video, taking video has its benefits. So with one cut finger, one broken 1/2-inch socket, and a really whacked head when I dropped the mic stand, the camera stand on it, gave me a nice little cut right there. But that's probably not a problem y'all will have. We are now ready to start. Now, when I was filming removing the exhaust, the microphone wasn't working. 2 points I wanted to make was that I had to loosen the heat shields on the rear one to get to the sockets to remove that one. Also, there is a gasket on the crossover pipe, which is these two pieces down there, and going into the head. Those are one-time use gaskets. So before you take this off, go ahead and get those gaskets in stock. I already have them here. Also, be wary with them. I'm not 100% sure, but I do think they make those with asbestos. So just be wary of those. I'm not 100% sure that one, but it's a heat sealing part, and that's kind of common. Also, when you take the exhaust pipes, be sure to put a rag or something in the holes so no critters or bugs or anything crawl in there. Other than that, next up is motor mounts. But that's for a video for another day. Hope y'all picked up a few things, enjoyed this video, and want to come back for the rest of the series. Be safe, have fun, and hopefully soon we'll be riding again.